declaration of interest.
Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in the business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it's a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal or personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from the Democratic Services staff.
Thank you. Gary, does anybody want to declare an interest at this stage? No? Okay, thank you. We move on to...
Thank you very much. Just to say that my wife volunteers in a primary school and I will want to ask a question about volunteering. Thank you very much for that. Meirik, did you raise your hand then? Thank you. Just to ask, with us working from home, how do we send in our declarations of interest in writing? Because it says that it needs to be sent in. It means posting it then, does it? There is an electronic form that we can send out to members to complete and they can return it. Just to explain for Councillor Emrys-Wen, that's a personal interest you're declaring, is it? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Agenda item 3, urgent matters. I've got a couple of points to highlight there. At 12 o'clock today, we will have a moment of reflection as to the impact of COVID as is done nationally. So I will be stopping the meeting at 12 o'clock for a minute's silence on that. Joining with us today is Julia Hughes, who's an independent member of the Standards Committee. Croeso, Julia, I'm sure you're there somewhere, I can't see you. But I hope you enjoy your experience at Cabinet today. And thirdly, I'd like to congratulate, we have a new county councillor in Denbighshire, Alan Hughes from Corwen. And I'm not sure if you're joining today, but croeso I Sir Dinbych and
welcome to Denbighshire.
12 months. Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which are the minutes. First of all, for accuracy, page 7, 8, 9, Meirik?
Yeah.
Yes. Page 11, I want to come in on. Okay, I'll remember you when we get to page 11, Meirik.
8, 9, 10, 11. Meirik?
Do you want to come in? Thank you very much, Leader. Under the street naming, under 6.1, I drew attention to the fact there was 2 lines exactly the same, the first and the second, and the officer said that they would correct that. I can't see that's contained in the minutes. Okay, I'll ask Gary to look into that and respond to what you raised last time, Meirik.
13, 14, and 15. We'll now go for matters arising, page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Will somebody propose that the minutes are correct, please? Julian, someone second that? Richard, okay, thank you all. Everyone in agreement with that? Thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is the volunteering policy. Richard Manion, please.
Thank you, Leader. We're here today with this report to seek ratification from the full council on updated policies and what will be, if you like, the one-stop shop when it comes to enhancing and furthering volunteering within Denbighshire. The policy presents itself as a handbook and a list of templates and best practice. And all of this work, all of this fine work that's been put together has been through the trade unions and had some consultation and representations made back. It went through the JCC committee, which, while the committee wasn't core, spoke very favourably and did like the policies and would like those positive sentiments passed on via Cabinet today. This has been through Cabinet briefing and is with us today for this ratification. The policies and the handbook are two-folded in that they help with our internal policies for the DCC workforce, because under COVID, there's lots of staff that have been redeployed. There's lots of staff that within their local communities have become even more involved than they were before. They're giving up their time. They're helping to make sure the communities are resilient. And this policy offers guidance for managers to make it easier for people to take time away from their normal roles and to take time off work if they do want to take up voluntary pursuits. It also enables enrichment and rotation and having a look at other possibilities and opportunities while you're in post, rather than having to take a massive leap of faith. The other part of the policy and the handbook looks towards engaging with the public and the bank of well-spirited, ridiculously enthusiastic volunteers that we have within Denbighshire. And it says goodbye to an old system that was a little bit disjointed and probably wasn't as robust as it needed to be, and puts everything through our website. And what this does is says, okay, if somebody's going to very generously give up their time within Denbighshire or further afield to help within communities and help with good causes and help with the environment and help with everything else that needs doing, and never more so than now. When those people give up their time, it helps the person that has the role or the function for them to serve in to recruit them more effectively, to bring them on board, to make sure that when they do give up that time, none of it, ideally, none of it is wasted. All of that generous gift of time is put to good use. So turning up on the first day and making sure you're properly inducted, turning up on the first day and knowing where you're going to go for lunch, turning up on the first day and knowing where the bathroom is, just basic, simple stuff. It will help managers and coordinators bring all of that information together, make sure somebody really feels onboarded properly, makes it very clear the policies and the guidelines and what you should and what you shouldn't be doing. So there's no inefficiency. It's pretty much you've come along to give your time, now give it and let's get on with the matter at hand. So basically these are policies that will help recruit, manage and support volunteers and staff at Denbighshire in going about their good work. I hope that's a broad brush summary, but we've got Nicola Neal and we've got Fliss here today who've done all the real hard work in bringing this workbook policy pack together. So I'll hand back over to you, Leader, and any questions, I'm sure you can send it to their very capable way.
Thank you, Richard, for that. Tony, Thomas, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yes, just backing Richard up, a lot of work, good work has been done by the team. I've been involved a little bit. Countryside Services, for instance, we have over 1,000 volunteers doing that. Some very experienced people. I think people do appreciate these days to be a lot more formal aware. But I do have some minor concerns.
Tony, you might need to switch your screen off. We We can't hear you
Okay.
very clearly, please. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Apologies for that. So, like I say, backing Richard up on this, a lot of good work has happened on this. Countryside Services, in my portfolio, we have over 1,000 volunteers. So this is a big job. A few of them might well be put off by the admin, but I think the vast majority of people appreciate that we have to be a lot more formal these days. But I do have some concerns, but I am very impressed by the work that's been done. So no real question, but I just have a little bit of a concern that some people we might lose. But there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, for that. And can I thank you both and officers for the work on this? It's something that I've been challenging for the need to be clear on for quite a few years now, and it's always been quite difficult to get to this stage. And probably the last 12 months has highlighted the importance of volunteers in terms of supporting communities when they're at the lowest. And we've seen some really good examples, haven't we, throughout the year. So the timing of this couldn't have been any better, just to sort of simplify and clarify our approach to supporting volunteers, because the benefits, as the report highlights, are quite significant for them and the people that they support as well. So I'm really pleased to see this, and hopefully we'll see it come into practice. A couple of points. One main point for me is it's really important that this is promoted well. I know it's 4.9, the report suggests that promotion is going to be key. It's important that people feel that they understand the process and they're able to become volunteers in a simple way, and are allowed that opportunity. And promotion to me is key for this in terms of building up the resource at community level. So I'm really pleased to see this, and good stuff. Okay, any questions from cabinet members?
Yeah, Leader, can I come in, please?
Mark Young, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to leave my camera off so you can hear me. Yeah, excellent piece of work. I think it's fantastic. But just a couple of points which you can answer for me, please. So the report's very honest, and it talks about you can advertise online, and people who haven't got online facilities or computers are going to struggle. So how do we make sure that they know about the opportunities? Because we want to include everyone. It also talks about how travel costs will be paid straight into bank accounts, and some people don't have bank accounts, so how do we cover that one? And then finally, although it's great to have volunteers, to manage volunteers is a big commitment. So how are you going to support the managers to do that? Because it is a big piece of work. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Are there any responses from officers to that, please?
Hello, thank you, Leader.
Nicola? Yeah.
Thank you for those questions. I'll try to answer those questions for you, Councillor Young. In terms of advertising online, and yes, that will be the main port of call for where people can find the volunteering opportunities. But we do have some promotional material or plan underway, and we'll make sure that our front-facing staff are aware of the fact that volunteering opportunities will be advertised online, so that when they're talking to their clients, they can look at those opportunities on their path. We'll also talk to town and community councils about how they can help to spread the message through there, and we'll continue to work with communities and get feedback, so that if there are any useful avenues to help people to access the opportunities, we can respond to this as this is live. Okay, I'm just checking you can hear me. I had a flash up on my screen, so I don't know if I turned my camera off. Is it working okay?
It might be better if you do put the camera off, Nicola. It was just starting to go towards the end there, please.
Okay, thank you. In terms of volunteer expenses, we've spoken to payroll and creditors department just to check what the processes would be if people didn't have bank accounts. So first of all, to say that with all the volunteers that we've been working with over the past few years, it's been 4 years since we have encountered this problem. So just as a start to say that it is a rare problem. But if there was such an issue, the process would be that we would reimburse people via check. Okay, so if that issue does arise, we will put a solution in place, and we'll find a solution to make sure that people are fairly paid for the expenses that they incur. In terms of the management question, I'm speaking as myself as a manager, and in terms of identifying volunteer opportunities, you're right that it does require some management capacity to do that. So managers would need to consider and make sure that they do have adequate capacity to oversee the volunteering placements that they've got. But we would also say that volunteering enables us to add value and to support our residents more strongly than we do through our usual services. So there is value there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Alan, did you want to add to that?
Yes, just quickly, Leader, because Nicola's covered it, I think, but Mark raises a good point about management capacity to support volunteers, and where we use a lot, then it is important that there is capacity to support people properly. But I think Richard raised the point here. We've learned a great deal during the pandemic by organising both staff and volunteers to support our communities and indeed sometimes our services.
Alan, sorry to cross. You might have to put the screen off, Alan.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, no, it's important to have the right management capacity. Mark's quite right. Richard's referred to this. During the pandemic, we've learned a lot about how to manage volunteers, and that you need to put some time in. So it is an agenda item for us in terms of developing the policy going forward. We understand the importance of doing this properly. It does take some capacity, and in areas where there are a lot of volunteers, that's particularly the case. But this new policy is not about skimping on things. It's about doing things properly, I'd say. Just wanted to add that. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, happy with that, Mark? Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Well, good work, Richard and officers, and I look forward to working with you all. Really good work.
Okay. Brian Jones, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. 1,000 apologies if I've missed that. I obviously read the document. Is there any plan to review the document when it's been in place and implemented? Will we review the document at some point in the not too distant future, let's say?
Okay, Richard, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just because the document's formulated now and we've got a great start, I think if there's any learning or if there's any policy updates needed, I'm sure it'll be fluid. It won't just be produced and put on a shelf and sit there for 5 years or so. Someone's mentioned Countryside Services, and those guys are absolutely amazing in the work they do and the way they engage, and they make it so much fun. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of feedback and plenty of update that can be brought back to the policies and shared as best practice by all.
Thank you, Richard. Bobby?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I would like to underline how very grateful we are for all our volunteers, and not the least of which in community support services, where they are absolutely invaluable. But I would echo Tony Thomas's worries that if recruitment becomes too formalised, we don't want to lose people because they can't be bothered to go through the process. So I would just put that little air of caution out there, whilst recognising we do probably need to formalise it in some way. I wouldn't like it, to mean that we lose some of our fantastic, willing volunteers.
Yeah, good point, Bobby. Probably that could be referred to when we do promote the policy, that it's open to everybody to be considered anyway. So that's a fair point. Richard, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, Leader, just a quick note. I hear the concern, and I'm sure it can be monitored and it can be fed back from the managers and coordinators we have around the business. But if somebody is so minded that they really want to help with a good cause, if they really want to give their time to help out others, stepping through a process to make sure, I'm sure they'll understand that having to make sure that they're safe and their background has been checked and that they turn up and that their personal equipment is all in order and they're safe and everybody else is safe. I think it pays our volunteers a bit of a disservice thinking that a couple of forms and a little bit of an administration process, when they're so minded to help out, is it's not going to be that big a barrier. But we will keep an eye on it. I hear what's being said. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that. Alan, did you want to respond as well?
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think I absolutely hear what Bobby and Tony have said about this. It's something to guard against, but I think there's a bigger risk with volunteers that if you don't actually do things properly, if it's not a coordinated response and well organized, then you actually lose people that way. Because if people don't get answers, they don't get treated properly, then that's also when they pull back. So it is swings and roundabouts here. I think it's perhaps more important to have a really thorough, supportive policy which will help people into volunteering, and that's in my experience, that's what we lose people more that way than the other. But to be noted, absolutely, and Richard's right. We just need to keep an eye on it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you,
Nicola.
Thank you. I'll just switch my camera off as well. Yes, just to provide some assurance, when we've developed this policy, we have tried to take a measured approach and really thought about the different context in which people volunteer. We recognise that some volunteering positions have safeguarding risks associated with them. So the measures that we put in place to manage those risks are appropriate. However, we're not taking a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of the bureaucracy that's needed for volunteers. So if a volunteering opportunity is much more leisurely and a low-risk activity, we're not asking for the same level of checks. So just to provide some assurance that we hope that the system that the policy that we've put in place is measured and appropriate for the different volunteering opportunities that are out there, but we will monitor the engagement with the process to check that there aren't any barriers. Diolch.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, any other comments from cabinet members? No, right. I'll go to Emrys, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. These policies are excellent. They provide support, safety and security for our volunteers, so excellent. Can I refer to one type of volunteering? And I've got a question about it. Volunteering schools, there are a number of parents, former teachers who volunteer to help with reading and so on in the classrooms. They go through the protection and safeguarding system. So they do complete those processes. Do these policies transfer naturally into schools, which are obviously under governor control? The second one is volunteering in the community. Within Town Council, for example, I've got a group that go out regularly to do litter picking. They're there under the supervision of Keep Wales Tidy and the Town Council itself, and there is safeguarding for everything. They get all the protective uniform and the correct things. There are also volunteers who do it on an informal basis. How do we protect those? They go for a walk, they see some litter, they take their own litter pickers and they pick up litter from the side of the road. Is there any protection for them? Say that an accident happened or that they did anything wrong? I don't know whether they've asked, and I don't know whether they need to do or that should be done, but I am concerned, especially when these people can be very young people, school children taking part as part of their baccalaureate work. What safeguarding can we provide on that level, please? Thank you, Emrys. I'll ask officers or Richard if they want to respond to that. 3 questions there.
Was that, did I hear my name, Leader?
Yes.
On schools, I think probably Nicola and Fliss will correct me, but I think one of the reasons we try and develop good practice in all the areas of work, but particularly in things like this, is so that it can be shared with other organisations that are not perhaps under our direct control. So we would encourage schools to take what's useful from this new policy and use that in their own areas if it's an improvement, and I suspect it might be in some cases. So we would always urge people to share on good practice. And the same would go for organisations like Ruthin Town Council and community councils generally. If our documents are open for people to use and to share and to adapt to their own organisation, I think we would encourage people to do that. And through our community support work and workers, we would signpost them to those if they've got questions. So I think that's always the case, that we would try and share best practice. And a lot of this work is, I think people would find very, very useful, actually, because it's taken a lot to put it together, and it would save people reinventing the wheel. In terms of informal volunteers, I can't quite see where we would have a responsibility for those, but others may have a view about it. But I think if they're acting on their own initiative, then that's probably, I don't think it would be the council's responsibility, but others may correct me. Leader, thank you.
Alan, Leader, if I may, where you have individual volunteers, where they go for a walk with the dog and end up with half a bin bag, that type of thing, I think having the website and moving away from kinetic will make it a little bit easier for, that's great that you're doing that. It's great that you're community spirited. It's great that you're spending some of your time to perform those. They're not even duties, they're not responsibilities, they're just tasks that enrich the life of everybody. But I think the way we've made it much easier to formalize that very informal work, much easier to engage in a safe way, because rather than just do it as a solitary thing, and that may be your thing, but it's easier to get other people on board. And as long as you're properly distanced, it'd be nice to share. It'd be nice to make that community just that one step more resilient. It'll be nice to have that engagement and to share what you're doing, because I know you don't do it for a t-shirt or a badge or glory or anything else. But it'd be nice to share that little bit of involvement in that community spirit, just by adding that extra little layer of formality. And that's not to say these policies are to kill the stuff that just happens spontaneously. It's more that we've made it a little bit easier just to get a few more people involved and to share it a bit more. Okay, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Iawn, okay, Emrys?
Just come back quickly. Thank you very much for the answers. Very happy to hear what Richard said at the last part there. We do need to acknowledge what these people are doing. It's happening voluntarily. This is with regards to my third question. I've had a number of requests over the past few months from young people who are keen to undertake this type of work. And it's difficult for me as a local member to give them advice which could put them in danger. So I usually refer them to the office. I wouldn't like to say, yeah, carry on, do the work, and then hear that there's been an accident at the side of the road. That's my main concern. And I wish to give acknowledgement to what's happening. I'm sure they don't expect that. There was a young girl who wanted to do this as part of her Welsh bag, and that's excellent. But her parents were keen that the safeguarding was in place. Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. My question is, this policy is just for people who work for the county council. Am I correct about that? There are many groups. People have formed groups during the past year to help others. And one or two have asked me about the checks. They used to be referred to as CRB. It's something different now. And that involves a great deal of work for volunteers. Is there help available? Do you signpost them to DBSC, or is the county council able to help these types of voluntary groups with their paperwork out? Thank you, Gwyneth, for that. And I'll ask one of the officers to respond. This policy, I thought, is for those outside of the county
It is.
to volunteer and support communities and the county by creating additional resources to provide services for the communities. So this is for people additional to the paid officers of the county. With regards to the checking, I'll ask Nicola or Alan.
In relation with DVSC, please.
Yeah, I think Nicola's ready to talk about that.
Yes, so just to emphasise that these policies that we've developed here are for volunteering opportunities with Denbighshire County Council. But you're quite right, Councillor Kensler, there are a lot of other there's a lot of other volunteering activity that takes place across the county. For any volunteering opportunities within Denbighshire County, they would usually be advertised through the Denbighshire Voluntary Services Council, as you mentioned, and that organisation also offers support to volunteers and to the community groups or the third sector grassroots organisations that they might be volunteering with. Now, we do work closely with DVSC as well. We speak frequently, so if there are if we know of demand somewhere, we will signpost people to DVSC, and we will collaborate and work in partnership with them where possible to make sure that things run smoothly as well, which happened all throughout COVID, where, you know, during the first lockdown. I would say that if there are issues in terms of volunteers where people are volunteering or doing volunteering activities on their own initiative in the county, and if we think they might be putting themselves at risk and we find out about it, then we will speak to DVSA and perhaps run some communication through PR and through town and community councils just to make sure that people are aware of good practice. Diolch.
Yeah. Gwyneth?
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Joan?
Thank you, Chair, Leader. First of all, I'd like to congratulate both Richard and the officers for putting forward this sort of policy. I think that volunteers are a valuable asset to all communities, so I do very much appreciate this trying to formalise a way forward. But I have a couple of questions. I'm concerned about things that volunteers within communities, and I do think that the countryside services are a wonderful example of a group that deal with massive amounts of voluntary workers. But I'm talking about specific things that happen within our communities. I'd like to know, first of all, how many managers that we've got in post that will be overseeing any volunteers support within our communities, and how are the managers being supported? I'd also like to look at the voluntary community things that are happening. We're asking some of our communities to go out into different areas and actually process the policies that we're putting forward in community, sort of champions within our community that are quite clearly volunteers. And I'm a little bit concerned about the safeguarding issues in and around them, and who is actually managing them, and how they're being managed. And lastly, I'd like to say that at the end of, well, not at the end of the process, but through the process, I'd like to see this coming to a scrutiny at some stage, where we could scrutinise the process of this policy and see how it goes. I'm sure we're all wishing it well, but looking at my communities and how we are using champions, I'm concerned that they do need managers, and we do need managers that have support systems in place. And I just want to know where the support systems are. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joan. Okay, bit of an operational advice there. So I look to Alan on this one. Can you respond to those questions, please?
Yes. How many managers support volunteers? I couldn't tell you absolutely, Joan, but we could certainly find out and do a count up. There will be people, particularly in areas in countryside and in Denbighshire Leisure and so on, where there's a huge number of volunteers. Felicity or Nicola might actually know, but we can work that out, and that might tie into the idea of reporting back to scrutiny, which I think is fine. I would suggest, particularly we've had some reservations about bureaucracy and things. So I think it'd be a good opportunity to take a kind of report back to scrutiny at some stage, just to see how things are going. We have got operationally a corporate support group, which is for people who work with a lot of volunteers. So in terms of supporting those managers who are working with volunteers, we've got corporate systems in place. And there's also a guide for managers in the suite of documents in terms of practical matters. So we try to put some things in place, Joan, because we recognise their importance. And I think if scrutiny is interested in how well that's going, then that would be a perfectly reasonable thing to ask after a period of time when things have been bedded in, and we can come back to you with some activity data, some things about how many people have volunteered and so on. So we can certainly do that. I would suggest we do that after a period when we can see how things have happened. It's a slightly harder question. Is what's happening with community volunteers, because community volunteers are, by their nature, they're often working. They're working not exactly on their own, but they're driven by local circumstances, local groups, and that's actually one of the great strengths of our community, is that people do that. And I think other members have mentioned that today about people just getting on with things. These documents and these systems are really meant to help people with that. So if they feel like they're not as safe or not as organized as they can be, then we would very much hope that our processes will help people improve that, Joan, without taking it over and making it something that can't happen. Because I think if we were to lose that spark of in the community of people doing things for themselves, it would be a terrible loss. These policies are there to try and make things work better and to support people to do that very kind of thing. So thank you, Leader. I hope that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Alan, for that. Are you okay with that, Joan? Yeah.
Yes, I'll watch it very carefully, and thank you very much for the responses.
That's it. I think there are no more speakers. We've had a good conversation on this. Richard, do you want to?
Recommendations?
Yes, please, Richard.
That Cabinet discusses the new policy and processes for managing volunteering activity within the Council and ratifies this suite of documents. In addition, the Cabinet comments on the proposed amendment to the time off work policy for employees wishing to participate in volunteering activities. Please see Appendix 7. That the committee confirms that it has read, understood and taken account of the Wellbeing Impact Assessment, which is Appendix 1, as part of today's consideration.
Thank you, Richard. Can I just call Gary in? Might need to just revisit one word, I think, Richard.
Sorry, it was just in 3.2 when it says the Cabinet comments on the proposed amendment to the time of work policy. I think it would be better if it said that Cabinet adopts or approves.
Yeah. You okay with that, Richard?
Yes, happy with that amendment.
Okay.
So that amendment's been there. Richard's happy with it. Is there a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Leader.
That was Brian. No, Tony seconded that first. Speak you to it, Brian, on that one. Okay, that's been.
Yeah, I'll have him after.
That's been. Is anyone against that? No, that's been moved. Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, team.
Agenda item 6, Sub-Regional Children's Residential Assessment Centre project updates. Hugh Hilditch Roberts, please.
Hope you're all well.
Good morning.
I just want to bring this paper really just to illustrate what we're doing in this area with regards to children's services, and that we are obviously every budget session we have, the debate is about the cost of children's services, the out of area placements. Can we reduce the budget? This debate is ongoing, and you know, as a children's service department, which during COVID actually is bucking the trend because our referrals are actually, apologies, our referrals are lower than they were before COVID, so there's a real positive in that respect. And what we're doing is working with Conway to build a centre that is effectively more on our doorstep, that we can actually support children in their existing environment, rather than having to, you know, in some cases take them to the south of England or Scotland or wherever it may be and take them away. So I'm not going to give you all the detail because making a debut at Cabinet today is Rhian Morel. And for those of you who have not met Rhian before, is an excellent officer and is heading up the Children's Service Department and is doing a sterling job. So I want to give Rhian the limelight, if you like, if you like today, rather than what I normally do is I talk the brief through. So I'm going to hand over to Rhian to give you the details of this, and hopefully this will be part of Rhian's legacy, is that she, as head of service, will have introduced this amazing building that will give us something extra here in North Wales, and she will give you the details. So hand it over to you, Rhian. Croeso.
Thank you. I am really pleased to be here today just to update everybody about this project. I'm really, really excited about this development. It's been a long road to get here, not only because of bats, badgers, knotweed and all sorts of other things on the site, but because we've taken some time to really develop a model that meets our needs for our own vulnerable children. We've looked at all sorts of good practice across Wales and nationally to make sure that we've developed something that will help divert children from becoming lack, actually be able to do something different for our young people. It will meet our needs, it will meet our priorities in terms of early intervention and preventing that long-term looked after and spend. Oh, I've just got a message to turn my camera off because I think my internet is playing up. There's too many people accessing too many Zoom meetings for various university courses here. So yes, we've looked at all sorts of good practice, and this does meet our own priorities, but also the priorities of Welsh Government in terms of regional collaboration, early intervention and prevention, the safe reduction of lack, and of course keeping children local, because we know that when we are able to keep our children local, we can work better with them and their families, we can improve their outcomes, and the long term reduce costs to the authority, because we are able to divert children back home quicker. We've really developed this model from the ground up. We talked cases with our partners in Health and Conway, and we examined cases where we think, had we had a centre like this, we would have done something differently and been able to rehabilitate children quicker by actually working directly with the families and children, giving some respite, giving some time out, which is what the centre will do, but also having a psychological formulation to be able to get to the heart of the matter for these families. The MDT team that will work within this centre is already up and running and is already working directly with children and families and already making a difference and diverting children away from long-term care. They are, however, working with one hand tied behind their back at the moment because they haven't got the residential centre. So, you know, they're recognising that actually there's a piece missing from this model. We, of course, do need further discussion around the ongoing costs and the shared responsibilities for the centre going forward, and that will be a separate discussion. But there is an absolute, you know, real strength of partnership and a real commitment to make this work. We've had excellent support from all the partner agencies who've really contributed to this development, and also from members who form part of the project board, and will, continue to provide that direction oversight. I've got no doubt that this is a unique programme within North Wales. It's going to offer something really different to our families, and I've no doubt that it will improve outcomes. I'm really, really pleased that we've got this far. As I say, it's been a long journey, but it's been a journey that's been well spent because we really thought about our needs. I'm happy to answer any questions. I could talk all day about, the young people that I think would benefit from this centre, but I think in cases sometimes, which isn't always very helpful. But any questions would be most welcome.
Okay, thank you, Rhian, for that. And it's always good to come to Cabinet with a positive report as opposed to a negative one. So you've had I hope and expect you'll have an easy ride in terms of the questions on this, because the principle of this is really what we all aspire to, and trying to keep people as local as we can, which this project obviously allows that to happen. Julian, did you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Not really a question, just a comment, and perhaps just to reinforce what Hugh and Rhian have just said in terms of the financial elements with regards to this. Obviously, this paper initially only refers to the letting of the work for the construction phase, which is fully funded. There will no doubt be some additional pressures that will come on down line in terms of the revenue elements of delivering the facility, but as both of them have said already, in the medium to long term, this will be a spend to save initiative, which will actually help to reduce the overspends within this service going forward. So thoroughly worthwhile. The capital element of it was reviewed by a strategic investment group and recommended to you as well. So I'd just like to commend it, and quite happy to recommend that it goes forward.
Thank you, Julian, for that. Brian?
I'd just like to make the observation, Leader, at 10.4 on the report on the risks, that the focus and the pressures kept up with the NRW reference the application to acquire the Badger license. I've had not a good experience recently on another project within the county. So I think that the lever needs to be kept on the up on that one, that doesn't eventually become a risk that jeopardizes.
Brian, you just stopped there. Can you put the screen off, please? We missed the last bit. We got most of it, Brian, about focusing on the NRW's approach.
That was the main piece of the observation, that the heat's kept on that, and it's not left too long, and you definitely need to keep the focus on applying for that Badger license, because the treacle factory takes a long time to turn on that, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks for that, Brian. Bobby, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, to thank Rhian for the report, and obviously to welcome this Regional Children's Assessment Unit. It's a great step forward, and it's an innovative idea come to fruition. I just one little question, where you mention in, I think it's 4.2, the maximum of 12 weeks accommodation for the young people. I wonder how flexible that 12 weeks is. Is it an absolute cut-off point? I know in terms of homelessness accommodation, which was a move-on situation, where it's a move-on situation, it's quite hard to move on, or has been at times. I just wondered how flexible the 12 weeks would be. Thanks, Rhian.
There will be some flexibility in that we recognise some children might not be able to really go home after that 12 weeks, and some children might need to carry on, in fact, being looked after. But the 12 weeks is a really deliberate amount of time, because what we don't want to do is have this assessment centre full. It is part of a toolkit for working therapeutically with families, and it's about giving families some breathing space from some behaviours perhaps, and giving us time to work with the family and with the child to make a return home feasible and safe. So the 12 weeks in the assessment centre is really important, because if they go a lot over that, then we reduce the capacity to get children back. It's not thought that all children will need 12 weeks within the centre either. You know, the aim is that we return home as quickly as possible, and we want that flexibility to be able to offer respite within that 12 weeks within that centre. So it might be a mix of home and some respite there. So there is some flexibility, but equally, you know, we have to be really clear that there is an ultimate goal here, and what we don't want is children living there for you know, months and months and months. It is a short, sharp piece of work, really. The team that goes with the centre, however, may continue to work with families after children have returned home, because that exit strategy and that handover back to statutory services needs to be really carefully thought out, and that's part of the psychological formulation that's done right at the start of the case being picked up.
Yeah, thanks, Rhiannon. Yes, I agree that it's sometimes the sooner it can be achieved, the better, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, Bobby. Thanks for that, Rhiannon. Any other comments from Cabinet members?
Please, Leader, just a quick question, please.
Mark, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Rhiannon. And just 10.3, when it talks about the need to secure revenue funding for ongoing costs, is that approach going to be to Welsh Government, or is a plan to ask the partners? Because obviously, if you share it between regional partners, might be an option. We might have to do that if Welsh Government won't. So what's the approach on that, please, Rhiannon? But good work, thank you.
At the moment, I think we're looking at both approaches. Actually, we're recognising that, you know, it might be all three partners putting money into this, but we will, of course, because, as I say, this ticks a lot of boxes for Welsh Government in terms of their priorities. We will also look for more grant funding and more funding streams. It's all up for debate at the moment, I think, is the honest answer.
No, thanks for that, Giacomo.
Okay, Matt. Okay, Meirig, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. If I can turn to the point raised by Councillor Brian Jones, 10.4, it appears that different departments of Welsh Government and so on need to work together here, I would say. If these large machinery coming onto the land are going to cause problems to badgers, and that goes against the law of the land, can't the Integrated Care Fund look at that problem and give an extension to the time for the grant to be spent, if it comes to that? Hugh, I don't know whether you want to come back in on that one. I think we need to look at this in its entirety. This is the same process as any other building that we build, or any new school or anything that we're building. The process is the process. Everybody works together to make sure that they're working the best way possible on site. With the badgers, they are part of the process. For example, for Aldi and Ruthin, there were badgers on that site. They've acted to make sure that they're totally safe before the construction work started. So I'm very confident that the process that we follow as a county is correct and is sensible and works for everyone. So the intention is to have that building built and operational as soon as possible, but following the law and within the law, obviously. Thank you, Hugh. I think the point has been made about the badges by Brian Jones, and I'm sure that the different departments will work together to resolve that problem. Those are our expectations. I would expect that that risk had been discussed before reaching this point, with now asking us to agree to spend the funding from Welsh Government. So I would expect that discussions have taken place with regards to that before this report coming to us. It's a very fair point. The point has been raised. And I'm sure that we as County Council members want assurance that there is a focus on that risk and it doesn't hold the project up. And that is a point I'm sure will arise as we move forward. Thank you very much for that. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Rhys Thomas. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't know whether the members remember, I have the privilege of representing the members on the county's fostering panel. And I just want to say that I'm very supportive of this scheme. I'm sure it will be very beneficial for the children who are placed in our care. So I'm very pleased to see this scheme coming to Cabinet. If I can have one small plug, one Rhian holds something which is called the Corporate Parenting Forum, and she has given a very presentation about this proposed centre to us on the forum. And if any member hasn't attended the Corporate Parenting Forum, next time one is held, please come along to learn more about the excellent work that our Children's Services Department undertake. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that, Rhys. I think that was just a statement. There was no question there, but thank you very much.
Could we come back to the recommendations, please, Hugh?
Yes. Unfortunately, I can't get it up on my screen.
Okay, do you want me to read it out for you, Hugh?
Yeah, would you mind? Because I can't.
Yeah. So the recommendation 3.1, that the Cabinet approve the sign-off of the partnership financial deed to allow the contract for the construction of the Children's Residential Assessment Units developments to be awarded. And 3.2, that the committee confirms that it is read, understood and taken account of the Wellbeing Impact Assessment Appendix 1 as part of its consideration.
Yes, so, I'm happy to.
So Hugh has moved that, you will move that, Hugh, and that's supported by Bobby, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Is there anybody against that? No. Okay, thank you for that. Agenda item 7 is the corporate plan update, Q3 2020 to 21. Julian Thompson-Hill, please.
Thank you, Leader. It's almost hard to think now that we're rapidly getting towards the end of this council term, getting towards the final year, and of course that means that we're getting towards the final year of the period covered by the current corporate plan. Even though we're already beginning to have our thoughts about the development of the next corporate plan, of course it is very important that we continue to keep an eye on what was expected both by ourselves and by our residents under the current plan. Some of these, this report is slightly out of kilter to how we would normally have brought these. There were some delays in reports due to COVID last year, which has had a bit of a knock-on effect, but we should be pretty much back on track in terms of the reporting mechanisms going forward. I'll ask Iolo in a moment to take you through the bulk of the report for the detail. But I think, as with most reports that we deal with, they're usually prefaced with a comment about the impact that COVID's had on delivery, and undoubtedly the corporate plan and some of the projects within that have been impacted as a result of COVID, if for no reason than in a lot of cases, staff that would otherwise have been delivering some of the projects have been redeployed into other areas. The report itself, therefore, has a section at the beginning which continues to report on the impacts resulting from COVID. It also, as you probably will know from previous reports, we report not only on the delivery of the measures, but also against the projects which support those measures. And you'll see from the summary page that the projects are generally reporting good progress. Two of the actual measures remain priorities for improvement, and those probably won't come as any great shock because they're the ones that we've been reporting for some time, and Yola will no doubt go through that in a second. But I suppose like to say that just because something is a priority for improvement, it's in the report, but just to remind you how we set the benchmark on that. We set our excellent parameter level as being in the upper quartile of benchmarked against our Welsh colleagues, and a priority for improvement if we're below the Welsh median. So it doesn't necessarily mean that whatever particular area is performing really poorly. It just means that in relation to the other Welsh authorities, we are actually below the Welsh average. This report went to performance scrutiny last week, and there were a number of specific questions relating to some of the projects, but primarily focusing in terms of housing and extra care amongst others. So Yolo, if I can hand over to you to go through the highlights of the report, please.
Yes, thank you, Julian. Can I just check that, I don't know if Alan, do you want to say anything before I dive in?
No, go ahead, Yolo. Talk people through it.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, as Julian explained, this report is not the report that you'd usually see. Cabinet would usually see Q2 and Q4, which includes the APR. But because of COVID, we were late producing the APR. So we thought it would be too soon then to bring you the Q2 report immediately after the APR. So we decided instead it'd make more sense to timetable this Q3 report with you. And then we will bring the Q4 APR in the summertime, back on our usual schedule. Again, as Julian said, we've included a chapter, as we did in the last report, that tries to draw out the highlights of the Council's response to the pandemic. We will continue to do that as well in Q4 and collate a sort of a picture of the whole year. I think it's a good thing to do that, not only for historic record, but as a point of reflection for the authority. And then the rest of the report is very much what Cabinet will be familiar with. So we have the 5 priorities, a chapter for each one. And at the start of each chapter, you will see that we draw out the new data. So if you looked at, for example, the housing priority on page 144 of your big packs, page 8 of the appendix, the first section talks about what new data we have. The data tables that are at the end of the chapter then show you everything. So that will be data that's also been reported to you historically as well. And then we give a paragraph for each project within the priority. I'm not going to go through every single one. We'd be here for a month on Sundays. But the overall picture, I think, has improved from the last report. I think, the authority has managed to get a lot of its projects, if not entirely back on track, mostly back on track. There are a few that will still obviously be suffering from delays, and members will be aware of those already. But on the whole, I do think it's a positive report. Performance scrutiny received it very well. There was a lot of discussion around housing because that is highlighted as a priority for improvement, but as I said to Scrutiny, we are on the cusp of what we're going to see with our housing improvements. You know, I think in this next year, we will see a rapid increase in new developments going up, and the data will reflect that. So I'm quite confident we will see a quick improvement in housing over the coming year. The other priority for improvement is around young people. That mainly reflects the measures that pertain to attainment and attendance. Both of those are measures now that we cannot get data on, and we are unlikely to have good data on for quite a while. So that is a challenge for the authority. And I think we have to, you know, this is an information report. We have to take it in the context of COVID and think about what else we know. And I think certainly the two main challenges for us as an authority will be around barriers that young people have faced to learning over the last year and how we keep them on track. And also, I think, how we protect vulnerable citizens in our communities, particularly from digital exclusion, and ensure that, you know, their voices are heard and that they are still able to access the services that they need. I think that's all I want to say on the report, so I'm happy to turn it over to questions.
Okay, thank you, Yola, for that. Okay, I'll open up to questions from Cabinet members, please. No questions from Cabinet members familiar with the priorities as we discuss them, and they will be discussing with heads of service on a regular basis anyway. Okay, any questions from members? No? Okay, I think, Yola, you've just sort of stifled everybody with our update. There are no questions. It seems pretty straightforward. All I would say is that progress has been made despite COVID, and I'd just like to thank the services, all services and officers, for their commitment to support the corporate plan, which is the members' ambition for the council. And it's really good to see that despite that, we have been able to make progress on most things. Some things are quite frustrating. We did test ourselves with a challenging corporate plan at the beginning of this council, and one of the biggest challenge was connectivity around the digital provision and extending and expanding on that. That's been quite a challenge, and it's not been entirely in our hands. That's the frustration that I've felt with that, that we have depended on Westminster and Welsh governments to direct companies to invest in places that we felt were difficult to reach, particularly in the rural areas. And it's not progressed at the pace that we would have liked, but the commitment is still there, and hopefully that will maintain despite the frustration around that. And that's all I've got to say on that at the moment. So no questions or comments. Okay, Julian, can you come to the recommendation, please?
Okay, thank you, Leader. So the recommendation 3.1, it's recommended the Cabinet consider the report and agree any further actions required to respond to any performance-related issues highlighted within the report. And 3.2, subject to any agreed changes, and Anthony, Cabinet confirm the content of the draft report.
Okay, that's been moved. Does someone second that? That's Bobby.
I'll second it, Leader.
Okay, everybody in agreement? No one against, is that? No. Okay, thank you for that. Agenda item 8, finance reports. Julian again, please.
Okay, thank you very much again, Leader. My usual finance update up to the end of February. There has been, as you will note in section 4, some substantial movement in terms of the projected figures. Obviously, we're getting towards the end of the financial year now. So there's been a movement from a projected overspend of roughly £1.75 million that I was reporting last month to a projected underspend of around about 718,000 in this report. Two reasons largely for that significant movement. One, we've now received the Q3 loss of income grant from Welsh Government. And we've also received from Welsh Government some additional COVID-related grant funding, which has come in late in the financial year. So those have tended to improve our position. As you'll see, if you go to the table on page 187, I think it is, yes it is, which is the usual one, you'll see there, the top part of the table relates to the additional costs that we incurred. And you'll see there that at the time that this report was written, there was we'd received some around about £6.2 million actually in the last couple of days. We've been advised that some of the items which were down as holding, the 52,000 roughly from November, and 112,000, around about 112,000 from December, are now going to actually be met. And in terms of the second element of the table there, you'll see, as I say, that we've now received the Q3 element of just over £2 million in full without any disallowals. We've also received confirmation that almost all of the January figures, from the first part of the table, will be received. I think there's just a small element, around about £19,000, which is being queried, and we don't think there's going to be any issue with that. So that's all very positive, that we're receiving significant numbers a lot quicker through now from Welsh Government, which is excellent. And that all goes down to the corporate budgets element, a little bit lower under that table, where you'll see that there's a projected underspend of around about £1.9 million. Down to two reasons really: Welsh Government funding the full year impact on reductions in council tax yield and increases in take up for council tax reduction scheme, but largely it's due to that additional Welsh grant which has just come in, which is for pressures reacting to COVID on the council as a whole. You'll see there that it's been allocated on the normal RSG formula and is unhypothecated for our use. So it's being used in the first instance, obviously, to bottom off any service underspends which haven't been met through any of the other grant regimes that have been available to us. And the recommendation is anything left over from that in terms of a surplus would be rolled into the budget mitigation reserve to help us with our continued responses and the budget process for next financial year. You'll also see there's a significant positive move in terms of our schools balances. At the beginning of the year, there was a deficit balance of around about just shy of £1.4 million. We're now projecting that there would actually be a credit balance of just over £500,000 as things stand at the moment. Again, it's due to improvement in the position to the impact of COVID grants that have been received, and catch-up funding has not actually been included as yet. Also, that would also serve to improve the position going forward. In terms of the HRA, you'll see there that's broadly in line with what we've been reporting before. In terms of the service variance, you'll see that in Appendix 2 to your report with the text to where the changes have taken place from last month's report. Appendix 4 provides an update on all of the major projects on the capital plan. Nothing significant I need to flag up at this point. All of the main projects remain on course and as per previous reporting. So I think that's probably all I wanted to say as an introduction. Steve, I don't know whether there's anything that I've missed that you wanted to highlight before we go to questions.
Thanks, Julian. Bore pawb. Yeah, I'd just highlight really the amount of help we've had from Welsh Government, really. I think in the spirit of partnership, and it's probably going to amount to over £20 million direct for the council, and that doesn't include all the help that Welsh Government have given businesses. So, and I'm stressing that because I don't want you to think that the reports at the beginning of the year were overplaying the issue. Actually, they were slightly underplaying the issue. I think I estimated about a £14 million overspend if we didn't receive any help at the beginning of the year. Well, we've already received almost £16 million of help from Welsh Government. So it's just to stress that picture really is that we are where we are because of working in partnership and that strategy that we set out at the beginning of the financial year in response to COVID. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, one thing not strictly related to the report, but I do tend to use this opportunity just to update members, just in relation to the last tranche of Welsh Government grants that were announced on the 12th of March for businesses. As per usual, the team pulled out all the stops by the 19th of March. We've made payments to around about 1,000 businesses, which is now increased with work over the weekend to just over 1,300 businesses, which is around about another £5.5 million of support for businesses, which the team have got out the door in quick order. So again, I just wanted to flag that up for members as well. So any questions members may have.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Are there any questions or comments from Cabinet members on this report? No. No, nothing from Cabinet. Okay, thank you. Other members, Hugh Irving, did you want to come in, please?
Yes, please, Leader. I think I've made this point before. This is absolutely excellent, the effort that's gone on by all concerned. And I'm not commenting about the effort at all. It's wonderful. What I'm concerned is the background, which is fraudulent applications, because I've read quite a bit in the press about them. Do we do anything? Do we just accept an application at face value and say, here's a business, they say they haven't been able to trade, so that now they're entitled to X grant? Or do we actually look at the substantiating of the facts in the applications?
Thank you, Hugh. I'll ask Steve to respond to that.
Yeah, yeah, there are checks. There are fraud checks. There are duplicate payments checks. So we check with that people aren't being paid twice. They haven't claimed money from the discretionary element, etc. I mean, the whole point of these grants is that the money is expedited to businesses when they need it. So there is an element of self-certification that's involved in this. Now, audit are looking at it and will be doing further checks. We are a member of the National Fraud Initiative where checks can be done. So there are likely to be a few sort of reclaiming of grants that we will need to do. But in the grand scheme of the response to COVID, I think it was a balance that Welsh Government have undertaken to try and get that money out to those who need it. People have had to self-declare. So, for example, when there was the losses, the losses they had to say that they were incurring in the autumn grants, they had to declare that. Now we can't check that until they produce their statement of accounts at their year end. So it is something that will probably be ongoing, and you may hear the odd story going forward. But I think that we've done all the checks that we can, given the task of getting this money to businesses. But I can't say hand on heart that there won't be incidences of payments that we've made that shouldn't have been made going forward. But we will carry on checking. And I say we're working with partners and the National Fraud Initiative and Audit to make sure that those checks are done.
Thank you. I quite understand that. I say it's just that I read from time to time of some prison sentences being imposed elsewhere in the country for businesses that never actually existed, or whatever one does to act as to act fraudulently. So it just concerns me that money may be going into the hands of those that aren't strictly entitled to it. So that was why I asked the question. Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Chair, can I just come back there?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on. No, go on, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just to add, I think our checks in Denbighshire are really good on the actual, the businesses existing. Obviously most of these grants the grants in Wales are all based on NNDR. So they have to be registered for NNDR, and that's caused some issues actually, because some businesses are micro businesses and don't pay for NNDR, and we've had to deal with that, and that's gone through the discretionary element, which is a very much smaller element. So the vast majority of the grants have been paid out on NNDR, in which case they are genuine businesses. I think any grey area for us would be around these self-declarations on the impact of COVID. So yes, they might exist, they might be closed, but actually they haven't hit the criteria on losses this year. I do think that's probably a minor risk, or a smaller risk than actually businesses not existing. Though I think our business rates department have been really good on making sure that all those checks are done, that the businesses are there, they do pay their rates in normal years, so they're a bona fide business.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah.
No, it's all right. I won't draw it out any longer. I think Steve's answered the question, so that's fine.
Okay, Hill, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Joan, please.
Thank you, Leader. Mine's a question, and I do apologise if I didn't hear all the debate that had gone on prior, because I had to go answer the door. But am I right in thinking that because of the money from Welsh Government that has been made available to us, that we don't now have an overspend?
Okay, Julian.
Thank you.
Well, we haven't actually got to the year end, obviously, yet, but the projection that we're currently working under on the information that we have to date is that we would be projecting an underspend of just over £700,000. Now, that might well change between now and the end of the financial year by the time everything comes out in the wash, both either slightly up or slightly down, but that's what we're projecting at this moment in time.
Thank you. That is really good news, because looking at last year and earlier on in this financial year, we were looking at a dire situation.
Yes.
I think all thanks to the Welsh Government, I have to say that. I've also to say a congratulations to the team that's been dealing with the business grants going out. I haven't had one single business that has had an issue this year. Well, half of this year, not quite the whole year, the handling of the grant situation within Denbighshire. And thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Certainly on behalf of the team, we do pass on all the positive comments to them, because they've been working extremely hard. So it is much appreciated by them, and I'll pass your comments on as well, Joan.
Gwyneth, please.
Thank you very much. By listening to this, I realise I should have declared an interest. I put an application in on behalf of Theatre Tymonant, and it was successful as a small business. Thank you, Gwyneth. We'll make a note that you've raised that declaration of interest now.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from anyone? No?
Alan's got his hand up.
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, Alan, I didn't see you there. Yeah, Alan James, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to reiterate really what Councillor Butterfield has said, I've had nothing but comments of praise about our officers who worked at weekends tirelessly to pay out grants to support businesses. So I just would like to also reiterate, put it on record, to thank all the staff. Julian and I have had a couple of correspondences over the months. And I know he has passed on my my comments to staff. So well done, and thanks very much. And thanks everybody for their support. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Alan, for that. Okay, no more comments or questions, are there? So I'll ask Julian to come to the recommendations, please.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that members note the budget set for 2020-21 and progress against the agreed strategy.
Okay, that's been proposed. Someone second that? Bobby, thank you. Been seconded. Nobody against that, is there? No. Okay, that's been moved. Agenda item 9, the Cabinet Forward Work Plan. Gary, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The work plan is set out for members. One item due for the 27th of April relating to contract procedure rules. It was envisaged there'd be new regulations post-Brexit, which we would reflect in the review of contract procedure rules. So we will just push that back slightly because we've not yet had those regulations, and rather than do it twice, it's probably better to do it once. So that will come off on the 27th of April.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Anything lead members want to add to that? No, right, okay, thank you. Right, do you want a 10 minutes break? I was just looking to Gary here. Should we move that we go to part 2 and then have a 10-minute break within part 2?
Yes, that would then anybody who's observing who's not entitled to be in at part 2 knows that they can leave the meeting now.
Yes,
yeah.
okay, can someone move that we go to part 2, please?
Yes, Leader.
Mark moved and then seconded by Tony. Yeah. Okay, we'll move to part 2, please, and ask people who are unable to join part 2 to leave the meeting. And then we'll now have a 10 minutes break. I'm trying to get a spot on for 12 o'clock. I don't know if it'll happen or not. So we'll have a 10 minutes break now. We are now formally in part 2, and we'll have a 10 minutes break. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.